Hey eBay friends, this is episode number 88 of eBay the Right Way. Today's date is November 23rd, and we are just one day away from Thanksgiving, so I'm sure some of you out there are scrambling to get it all done. Others may not even have time to listen to this until Thanksgiving is over. This is such a busy time of year. Today's guest is Holly in Delaware. She has been a major contributor on the Facebook group and is always willing to answer questions and help other sellers. So let's get straight into the conversation with Holly.
Hello, listeners. Today we have Holly with us, and she is from a state where I don't think I've had a guest from your state. How are you doing this morning?
Good, thanks.
Good. And you are located where?
I am in Delaware, a little south of Wilmington. So, yeah.
Okay.
Which really most people know. So it's really about 45 minutes from Philadelphia.
Okay.
Pennsylvania.
And isn't Delaware still the credit card capital of the world?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's right.
Meaning, I worked in banking in the late 80s, early 90s, and that was just all the credit card processors were in Delaware. And do we know why?
I think it has to do with taxes. The business taxing is beneficial to them. My husband works for a bank, so yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's how we got here. So was with a credit card bank, and he's switched to a couple positions. But yeah.
And that is all I know about Delaware.
Yeah, well, at least you know it's a state. Most people aren't even sure if it's a state.
So is it big? It's bigger than Rhode Island.
I'm not sure exact size. I think so, but not much probably. I don't know my geography.
Okay. Well, and we had a little chat before we started recording, and turns out you lived in Dunwoody, Georgia, which is where I came from. And went to, can I say it?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Went to Shallowford Elementary.
I did. Yes.
We would have gone to the same high school, and you're a year older than me. So
funny. Small
what happened
world.
when you left Georgia? Where'd you go?
So we moved. My dad was transferred back to Pennsylvania, and I lived there for a while, and went through high school there, went to college in Western New York, and came back to Pennsylvania. I did a year in Austria. I lived in Austria after college for a year. Oh. And then I came back to Pennsylvania and ended up in Delaware. And I've been here since 93, 94. Yeah.
Okay. And what is your professional background?
So I went to college with a double major in elementary education and German.
Oh.
Which you cannot use together. It makes no sense.
Unless you want to teach at a German kindergarten, right?
Right. I love the German, and I did the education just as the side. That's how I got to Austria. I was over there after graduating because of the German. Then I came back to the States. I taught for a year here and learned that I am not a gifted teacher, and teaching was not the thing for me. So career change. I ended up working in the corporate world for 5 years, married, had kids, and was a stay-at-home mom for the next 26, 27 years. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I started off in early childhood education because I'm the second of four. And I was always taking care of my younger siblings. And then I taught gymnastics, like preschool age kids. And I thought, I could make a career out of this. And then I got into it, and it was like, that age is very hard. There's a lot of self-control issues, and it wasn't the same as babysitting or taking care of your siblings.
Right. No kidding.
Yeah. And it's funny how I kind of ended up as a teacher, but for adults.
Right. It's true. And it is the one thing about teaching I find is it's a skill that can be used across a number of areas. In fact, I did end up using it when I switched to the corporate world. I got in working in a purchasing department. They were implementing a new computer program. And so they hired me to test it's field testing. So I didn't have to know how to code or anything. And because I did that, I became the so-called expert, which meant then they sent me out to the plants to train the people how to use the new system. So that teaching came in helpful there at least. So I guess I used it.
Yeah. And one thing people don't realize is teaching takes a lot of patience, because you might explain something the way that makes sense to you, but you have to modify that for a student who doesn't understand or just isn't grasping it. You have to be creative enough to figure out another way to explain something so that everybody understands it. And that's tough when you have a room full of 30 kids or even
It is.
adults.
I always say teaching is more than just knowing the content. You can know the content. That does not make you a good teacher, because you have to be able to communicate it. And also you have to be able to have classroom control. I had the content piece. I did not have the other two. So it's really a lot.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah. Being able to communicate it is there's a lot of smart people, highly intelligent people that know things, but they can't communicate that to other people. So it's like a cocktail of different characteristics you have to just be born with, really.
Right. It's true. You have to be gifted with those other skills as well as knowing the content. Yeah.
And you have to be a leader, being up in front of all the students, whether they're children or adults, and be able to gain their respect. And I have a lot of respect for teachers, because they have to put up with a lot of crap and politics, and like, you can't do this and you can't do that. And your creativity can be limited because, we don't allow that. And it's like, it's a tough situation. And I say this a lot, but I know teachers, and they're like waiting for their retirement, waiting for their pension. Yes, I have 3 years and 14 days and 8 hours until I can retire.
Yes. And I have a greater appreciation for it too, for the hard work that they have, whatever realm they're in. So I appreciate anyone who's in that occupation, because it's not easy. And it's not like a simple 9 to 2 or 3 job. I know it's longer hours and so on. So, yeah.
Well, I think we end up where we're supposed to. Like, every experience in life is building on what you're going to be in the future. So no experience is wasted. If you changed your major 4 times, that's okay. You learned about all these different topics and fields, and you learned what you did like, you learned what you didn't like. And I call it the Goldilocks principle. It's just, you keep going until you find the one that's just right.
Right. And I see that God does use all those things, experiences in your life. I mean, that's how the eBay thing came together for me. It's just amazing how many different skills you can use in an eBay business. So let's just segue into that. How did you get started? So I'll start because I have 3 kids, all adult children now. And my youngest is a senior in college. But when he was graduating from high school, as I said, was a stay-at-home mom. And so he was going to be going into college. I was not looking for something, but I think my kids were thinking for me. They all wanted me. They're like, Mom, you should go work at the Apple store. I'm an Apple fanatic, love all things Apple, love technology. And I'm the one in the family who, tries to keep up and help when somebody needs help.
But to work at the Apple store, you're going to have to change your look.
Yes. And well, not just that.
You got to be a little bit more edgy.
Yes. And that wouldn't work. We'll start there. And then on top of that, after being a stay-at-home mom for 20 plus years, and I would have loved working in the Apple store, but just the idea of having to be there like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from 10 to 4 or whatever on a Friday night I just couldn't bear the inflexibility after really being able to be flexible. And also, I believe as any mom knows of adult kids, that doesn't mean they don't still need you. And I wanted to be available for them if they did need me. I mean, they don't need me for major things, but I want to be able to run something to them if I need to, or join them for lunch or dinner or whatever. And I still wasn't thinking of what to do. It really happened because the summer he graduated, I believe, from high school, we were renovating our kitchen and friends were over and we were getting rid of the kitchen island. And one of the friends said, you should sell that island. And I said, this island is 20 years old. All my kids, all our friends, everyone, I mean, it was beat up. Long story short, it's sold. I think I sold it on actually Let Go when that was an app. I don't even think that's an app anymore. But I was just so shocked that it sold for like $400. An old island that we had stools that went with it was sold. I joke around. My husband ran down to the basement and just started pulling everything up out of the basement. Try this, try this.
What about this? What about this?
Supportive. Yeah. And I've had an eBay account since 1998. So I already had an account and I had sold one thing on it way back when. And I think I'd probably bought a couple things, not much, but I had a friend, once I started to list things on eBay that we owned, went through some of that stuff. And I had a friend whose husband was doing eBay on the side. And I really credit him with helping me. He was just someone I could ask questions as I was just getting into it. And he was actually selling plus size women's clothing and he was going to Goodwill. He was already into that. And that whole concept I'd never heard of or known. It sounded weird. I was like, you're buying clothes at Goodwill and you're selling them. And it kind of sounded gross at first. I'm like, but then obviously I learned and I went, and it's funny what you do when you start the business. I remember thinking first when I go in, well, actually, I'm pretty sure I texted him and I said, would you mind if I tried what you're doing? As if I were shopping, I would take all the clothes from him in the area. Like, not having the concept, Goodwill has more stuff than they can even ever sell out of. But I didn't understand that. I didn't understand. And I wasn't, I was the person who thought that Goodwill was for people who had great needs. I didn't realize what the mission of Goodwill was. I had a lot of learning to do, but I just started that way. And my first goal was to try and earn enough a month to cover the car payment, to try and help us, and it just kind of went from there. And I loved it. I think that's what was just so interesting to me. I absolutely loved it. What was also funny is I'm not a shopper, and my poor daughter, who was very patient with me, she loves to shop and we'll go out together, but I'm just not a shopper for a million reasons. But oddly enough, when it comes to shopping for eBay stuff, I love it. I don't know. I guess the difference is I don't feel like I'm really spending my money. It feels like, because I only use the money I've earned in eBay to buy more, to source additional products. And so it's never taking a cut into our finances. It's contributing instead of that. So
when did you start actually buying for resale on purpose, going to Goodwill?
I would say that was probably in 2019. So I probably did 6 months of selling my own things and then started going to Goodwill. I started in women's clothing like my friend had, and clothing is not my thing. I don't stay up on the latest fashions, but I also found clothing to be just more difficult. It's not my area of interest, and it's a lot of bending over to take the measurements, laying it out. And I had a mannequin and all, and I used that, but it just wasn't a great fit
Yeah,
for
if
me.
it's not like your thing, then don't do it. And you're funny
Yeah,
because not keeping up with the latest fashions. Well, yeah, I sold a pair of underwear
true.
last
It's
week
true.
that was probably from the 60s, and it was like the ruffly, it had ruffles on it. They're like granny panties, and they had the Union label. I mean, that's not a new fashion. That's a really old
True.
fashion.
True.
So,
That
I mean,
is
you don't
true.
have
Yes.
to be doing what's current. In fact, over my evolution of my business, that's kind of what I did at first, is like, what are people into? What do they want? But it's too hard to keep up with if you're doing what's
It
what's
is.
current, because it's constantly changing. And so that's when a few years ago, I'm like, I'm gonna focus on things that don't change, like that classic LL Bean long plaid wool skirt you wear with boots,
Right.
like we wore in the 80s. Or,
Yeah.
an Eddie Bauer fishing vest, or things that are timeless. And it's less stressful because you don't feel like you have to be in the know every second. You're like, oh yeah, these are some Oshkosh overalls. These have been around forever, and so it's for the listener.
That was good. Yes. And I did find also I did do some men's clothes, and I do still look at like men's jackets or hoodies. Those are I do like that. That's easy. I think men's fits with clothing is easier than women. Something there's the possibility something won't fit a woman if it's a shirt or skirt or
Mhm.
whatever, but with
Yeah, we
men it's
have
a
more
little
parts to
less
fit.
variance. Yes, exactly. And we
And
have a more
that,
of an idea of how we want it to look.
right.
So
And I think Carlos mentioned Ocean Pacific, OP
yes,
is
OP,
coming
I
back.
was shocked to hear him
Champion
say
is
that.
the
Yes,
older Champion stuff is
Champion
coming
is,
back.
yes.
Um,
I just saw my son
so
this morning. He was wearing Lacoste sneakers. Like Izod, I looked and they had and Izod was a big thing back in the day. Probably when I was in high school, it was expensive, so I didn't have many Izod things.
yeah,
But
you were nobody if you didn't have an alligator
no, that's right. And chinos and a pair of chinos to go with it. Yeah.
and your penny loafers with no socks.
Right. 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 So
That
crazy.
look. I mean, the Breakfast Club movie is so spot on and true with all the different
It is.
clicks. And I watched a documentary on that. I think it was might have been on the Roku channel. And it talked about the making of that movie. And it was very interesting because Molly Ringwald did not like the clothes they had picked for her.
Oh,
And
that's
they wear
funny.
the same clothes through the whole movie.
Yes.
And so the director, John Hughes, took her to the mall, and he's like, well, what would this character wear? And she got to pick out all her own clothes.
Oh,
And
that's
she was
funny. And they're
fabulous.
perfect in the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, she's got a long straight skirt and boots and the jewelry, and like look like a snobby rich kid.
Right.
But,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, so like all that
Funny.
stuff's coming back. So if you're concerned about knowing what's current, you don't really have to be, because even in fashion, they say there's cycles. There's like 20-year cycles. So please do
Right.
not bring back all that gaudy 70s stuff. Like they wore on Laughing with all the design
Yes.
craziness and the giant wide leg jeans and all that stuff. But yeah, so it's coming back. But yeah, I'm on board. You do electronics though, right?
I do. So I like I said, the clothing wasn't the thing, and I probably started picked up a VCR too, and I obviously going back to the Apple, I like electronics, and I quickly learned white boxes. I always look for a white box. 9 times out of 10, white boxes are electronics, and people. It's funny because people get electronics. This is my theory. I think they get electronics as gifts, and they either don't know what they are, they just aren't a techie and don't want to use it, so they just give it to Goodwill. And the number of new $50 to $100 to $150 electronics I have found. And I'm all excited. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. I think, one time I found a year or two ago a box of the Tile trackers. And it was before Apple had come out with theirs, and people weren't really familiar with them. They looked like the size of a stamp. It had 3 of them in there. I knew looking right away that's probably $75 right there. And so I like that. And I really got into VCRs. Not that I am any VCR expert by any stretch. I know how to use a VCR, but it seemed to be just something people constantly were looking for. And I think I messaged one of the people in the Facebook group when I started to see VCRs were selling and said, so what size box do you use? I was a little nervous about shipping something that large. That was larger to me. And I don't know if it was KC or someone else who, told me exactly like a 20 by 14 by 6 box, order those. All my other boxes I have friends give me from Amazon, but for the VCRs, I actually just get a bunch of boxes. And I just like electronics. I don't mind testing them if they're not too complicated. If they're, complicated, I don't bother, but I do enjoy those probably. In fact, I was looking through my years, and that definitely for the past 3 years is the highest category I sell in is electronics. So
really,
yeah.
What's the most expensive thing you've ever sold?
Well, this month, not an electronic, it was that $1,400 sale I had on Pfaltzgraff Star Trek dishes.
Okay, I didn't see that. That was October?
I think it was the end of October.
Okay.
It's interesting because it's everything out of my niche. It is not, I was at a garage sale and I saw a table of boxes that said Star Trek on them. I do know Star Trek people like their things and they are Star Trek. I generally stay away from breakables. I'm not a dish seller or anything. But I think this caught my attention because they were in boxes. And so I knew they were packaged safely from the original, Anyways, the sign said $20 per box. I thought, I also never negotiate. I tried negotiating and I thought I'll ask him if he would do 10 boxes at $10 a piece. So I'll do $100. And I asked the guy, I said, would you do $100 for, and before I could get the words out of my mouth, he said, you can have it all for $100. And it was over 20 boxes of sets. It was a plate, a cup, and a saucer set. So he loaded them in my car and I got them home. I found out half of them were actually bone china. That was American bone china sets. The others are the Pfaltzgraff we think of, more of the stoneware. All of them were the Star Trek series. The bone china ones were limited edition, so they each were numbered on the back. And I was slowly taking them out of the box when I got home, cleaning it, wiping down the boxes, and I was listing one box at a time. And I listed the first one for probably $225, just one of the boxes. And it sold, and I listed two more of them sold for between $250 and $200. And it was a repeat buyer had bought 2 of them. So I'm looking at these other 15 boxes I had still left to sell, doing one by one. And I finally decided to message. I wasn't even sure if this was allowable on eBay. I'm a big rule follower. So, I did check with them. Yeah. So I checked with them and I ended up messaging the buyer who had bought 2. And I said, I'm getting ready to list another 18. I just thought, since you're interested, or you already bought these 2, if you're interested and would like to have any more at his lowest offer, which was $200, I would be happy to make a special listing just for you. He said he wanted 8 of them. And he said, would I do $175 per box, which sounded great to me, considering when I calculated it out, I got them for $4 a box. So, he ordered, I set up a special order for him for 8 of them, and it was $1,400. And wow, that was exciting, very exciting. So yeah.
And that was how much? $100 investment?
So it was I've probably made over $2,000, and it was $100 investment. I still have a few. There were a couple of mugs. I still have, I think, 4 sets of the dishes left. I just sold another one yesterday of the stoneware. Those are lower. They're about $50 they sell for, but yeah.
Wow, that is
So that
amazing.
was exciting.
Did
Yes.
that make you think, maybe I need to upgrade my car if I'm making my car payment and I'm making $2,000 on a sale?
Funny story that you should say that. The car I
Really?
drive is the same car that my 21-year-old son was in when he was 3. It is a 2004 van, and I laugh at how it has taken us through all of life stages, from needing all the seats in for all the kids and their friends, to taking the middle seats out for the teenage boys so their legs stretch through it, to now eBay. I have all the seats taken out, and it is great for, it can fit a 7-foot couch to however many boxes of things I want, and it's still chugging along with 230,000 miles on it. It's funny because it's amazing. Yeah.
What make and model is it?
It's just a Toyota Sienna 2004. It has a few special things about it now. The one sliding side door, you can't push a button, but it still slides open. The driver's side seat won't go forward electrically, so I have to put a pillow behind my back so I can reach the sit comfortably. That's not a big deal to me. It's I'm not making any payments on that car.
When you look at a new car or another vehicle and payments, I'm in a 2008 Kia Sorento, and it just hit 130,000 miles because I've set up my life where I don't have to drive very much,
Right.
I stay in my little radius of, 5 to 10 miles. And my kids both learned to drive in that car. And
all mine learned to drive in mine.
It's like,
yes.
And I know I can get another 100,000 miles out of it. And it's been paid for 8 years. And
exactly.
Now I'm to the point of it's the challenge of how long can we make this vehicle last. It has a couple of dings on it. My niece was visiting one weekend, and she had parked next to me in the driveway, and there's never anybody in the driveway. So I just get in the car, la-di-da, I'm going to run to the grocery store. I start backing up, and I hear this crunching sound. I thought I ran over a can or something. And I was like, I took off her side mirror.
No.
Oh, right. Her car is there. So there's this little scrape on the side. It gives it character. Every time
it does, but you also don't have to worry. You don't have to worry if it gets a ding. It's not.
No, and it's no one's going to break into my car because it's an older model. It just looks very utilitarian. It doesn't have the latest stereo sound system. It doesn't have all the stuff.
Nor does mine.
DVD players on the seats and all that stuff. It's just my little vehicle to. It's just Goldie. She's gold.
Yeah.
It's like you, I can fold the seats down. It's great for cargo. It's great for moving. I can put small furniture in it. It's this is great. I don't need to change anything.
Don't need anything. Right.
Keep going. Yeah.
That's until they die, until it literally dies. In fact, and again, with eBay, it's funny because my husband and I mean, we obviously know it's not going to drive forever, and we keep waiting for the year for it to die, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
So when the repairs outweigh the cost of a new one, it's
and
now we need to make that decision. But yeah,
we're not there yet.
Good. Yeah.
But we would have originally thought of getting an SUV to replace it. We do have a Toyota RAV, which we love, and we thought maybe getting another thing like that. But eBay has made us rethink it and really consider, it when we need to replace it, we would probably replace it with another van, just because it's so functional. It's so useful, and for so many different reasons. So
you have that space if you do happen upon something that you need to transport, to sell, or buy. A large lot of something. I did consider downsizing even to a hybrid car. And I was just, it's small. I like having all this room.
It is true. And also sitting up, I don't know how high your car sits, but once you've sat in those higher seats and in like an SUV, it would be very hard to go back down to something else. I
Visibility
don't
is
know.
much better.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
okay.
it's good.
So we're on the same wavelength with that. Make it last. Yeah. So
yes.
Going back to electronics, what was the most expensive electronic thing you've ever sold?
So I had to write this down so that I would remember. I was looking, it was probably a Nikon camera I sold for $225.99, and that was in 2021. So now I've probably had more in 2022. I'm trying to think of other electronics. But it's a camera. I did a ham radio once. I think that went for over $200. That was the first and only ham radio, because that took a little more research than I do not know how to use a ham radio. And I actually had to take it to a ham radio place and ask them to test it for me, which they were actually willing to do, which was really helpful. So I'm trying to think, those electronics, I'm looking around. I do a lot of Wii game consoles, a couple PS2s, I guess I've done. I have my one son's also helpful, willing to test a few games for me when needed on certain systems. So that's a big help. So those are the electronics I look at.
Are you finding those in the thrift store?
I am finding those in Goodwill. I have started doing a lot more I did garage sales and estate sales more this year than ever before. And I found a few there. And so that has been good as well. And also it's interesting with eBay, I've seen the market. You really do have to keep an eye on the market. So Wii's were selling really quickly a year ago, not so quickly now. And of course, in COVID, I think I counted at one point, I think I sold 55 VCRs during COVID, like 2021, 55 of them. I know. Isn't that crazy?
So people were staying home watching whatever.
Yes. And I think a lot were home and they had the time to convert their home movies to digital. And so they needed a VCR to do that. That was so I see it for that reason. And I sell them around Mother's Day. People buy them for their mothers who have home videos, still on a VHS tape that they want to play it on. So that's it's kind of interesting to learn so many times I'd love to ask why with so many items I sell.
I know. And I kind of assumed that VCRs and the TV VCR combos, those little square ones, were a nursing home thing. Like there's older movies that are not on DVD or streaming, and they are only on VHS. And somebody told me that. But then for those small TVs, they're used for gaming as well.
Yes, I was going to say that's what they're used for, a lot of the gaming, because they have the front ports and they can just plug the game systems in there that use the old, red, yellow, white cord. So it's funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that it would hurt to ask, hey, I'm curious why you bought this outdated technology. What's going on with that? I do ask people those questions, and say it helps me be a better seller if I know why people want this.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I did have I had the opportunity to ask so the other thing, as electronics have come and go, what I've gotten into, and I know you have too more this year, is plush. I love doing plush. And one of the things I've sold recently was in an estate sale, they had a free box of plush, and in there was one of the rubber face plush.
Oh,
just picture, if I could show a picture, it would be the most beat up, falling apart, dirty thing you can imagine. And it wasn't a large one. It was only probably 12 inches, 13 inches high. I couldn't even tell what animal it was, but I brought it home. It did have an imprint on the plastic that said small rabbit, but it was not a rabbit. Like, anyone who looked at it could clearly see it was not a rabbit. So I did what you have mentioned, and I think others have mentioned. I joined a Facebook group. There's a Facebook group for rubber face, plastic face stuffed animals. And I
Ah,
asked them, I mean, there's a Facebook group for everything. I asked them about it. I was trying to get an idea of what it was in pricing, and a lot of people were helpful in saying well, they agreed it wasn't a rabbit. What happens is they used the same mold and then would make a new animal, but it still had the imprint to say it was a rabbit. So that was interesting. I ended up, I couldn't figure out a price on it. I thought I'll do an auction. I don't normally do auctions. Almost everything of mine's buy it now. I did the auction just to see what the pricing was. I had set it as I think I started the auction, I don't know, $24.99 or something. And I had to buy it now at $125. And somebody messaged me within an hour and asked if I would lower the buy it now. I lowered the buy it now to $75 and they bought it right away. And that was shocking. And then the good thing about that was someone in the Facebook group had said they were interested. It had already sold. So I did message her back and I said, I'm so sorry it sold, but can you just explain to me why you would want this animal in this condition? It was one of those where when I set it on the table, some of the pieces just disintegrated on the table. That's how bad. There were areas where all the fur was rubbed off. It was something. And she said, we like the challenge of fixing it up and cleaning it up and making it look as brand new as possible. So I thought, okay, there are people out there that like
so
to do
yeah,
that.
professional rescuer.
Yes, I guess.
And there
And there
is
are
something
collectors,
to
of
that.
course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do that with
Yeah.
things sometimes. I'm like, this is only $1. I could probably fix this.
Yeah. So and I do that, or with shoes. I do like to do shoes as well. That is another thing that I've probably done all along. And you can really clean some shoes up and they look so much better with just a little bit of effort in cleaning. The good magic eraser will do, worlds of good. So
Mhm.
yeah. Yep.
Well, how many items do you have in your store?
I have I think I have around 360 right now.
Okay.
So not huge, not small. I just this year got it past 350. That was my goal has been my goal. And I just couldn't it was a good thing I was selling. So I just couldn't replenish as I was selling. But yeah, I like that number. I think that I'll probably keep it between 350, 375. That seems to work for me. So
Okay.
yeah.
And where do you store your items?
Since the kids have moved out, I have more
You
space.
have more room.
Yes. So I store, and we have a good sized basement. So I store most of the hard goods in my basement. Anything from the electronics to, I do like, some cosmetics or things that are sealed, books, games, things like that. Clothing and shoes and stuffed animals, I store in one of my kids' rooms up, which is perfect because I have a closet. I can hang the clothes, the shoes are where the shoes go, and there's some shelving I can put the stuffed animals on. So yeah, that is an easy, that has fortunately not been a problem. I also have stored boxes in the basement. I have tons of boxes. So, because I have the space for them, so I may as well,
Yeah. Yeah. You can have a separate space. That always works. So would you consider yourself full-time eBay?
I think so because I don't have another job. I do. We're pretty active in our church and obviously in my kids' life. So, but yeah, eBay is what I do mostly during the day. So I always wish I was putting more time into it, just more focused time. I'm very easily distracted. So I, might be working on something, but then I get taken away to something else, but working on that.
Well, I think everybody feels that way because eBay's just unlimited. You could work on it
It is
24/7 for the next 40 years and still feel like there's so much more I need to do because the inventory flow it never stops. It's just
right. And it's always more fun to be outsourcing than listing. So, the drive is to go out. I do, I think you and I do the same thing in that I'll take my pictures or I'll be outsourcing during the day, but while I'm sitting watching TV at night is when I do a lot of the listing. So that's, it's good. You can kind of keep an eye on both screens. So,
Yeah. And you have to get to a point where you're comfortable with that, not focusing on it 100%. But after a while, it's just repetition. It's
right,
almost
right,
just data entry. And you don't have to.
right.
Yeah, I work on my listings when I don't need to be 100% on mentally.
Right.
So
Right.
lately I've started doing them in the morning, making a priority. And so it gets done.
I do like the morning. I can, for the same reason, I can sit and really 100% concentrate and get it done. And I just feel like I'm sharper in the morning, but yeah.
Yeah. But when you're juggling so many things, it's like, which thing do I make a priority? And
Right.
that's hard for some people to figure that out. I have a little block calendar on like Google Drive.
Mm-hmm.
It's every day, like what I'm going to do, shipping or recording a podcast or editing a podcast or making a video or whatever it is I'm doing. And then when I do it, I fill that block with green. So it's like
Yes.
that
Yeah.
got
That's a good
done,
way to
that got
manage your
done,
time.
that
Mm-hmm.
needs to roll over to tomorrow. That did not get done. And then like what I'm doing this time for the Bolo book for next year, 2023, is I'm doing so many a week, like 3 a week
Oh,
of
right.
finding the pictures, doing the text, doing the research instead of trying to put it all together at one time. Because, you just learn new stuff all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, I like that workflow of working on things a little bit along the way so that when your deadline is there, your work's pretty much done.
Right. Right.
So,
Agree. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you said you're mostly a thrift store person?
Mostly thrift store, but then recently, I would say in the past 3 or 4 months, well, since summer, is um, garage sales and estate sales. And for some reason, right now, my thrift stores are not. Uh, the one nearest to me that I've probably bought most of my stuff at is, I don't know if they're holding more back and putting it online or what, but I'm not finding what I used to find now. It's funny, I've gotten into a routine. As friends heard that I was doing this, a friend of mine recommended a thrift store that's about an hour and 15 minutes away. It happens to be near where my parents live, which is perfect. So, long story short, on Thursdays, I drive up and source all day at one thrift store there. I stay overnight with my parents, which is fun, spending the time with them. And then on Friday, I also source up there at a couple other thrift stores. And then I come back home. And those are still good. eBay is just so interesting. I've also met people, that you see regularly in the thrift stores. So I've met someone in that area now, and she and I talk a lot. She showed me some new places up there too to go to.
Oh,
So
great.
yeah. So in fact, there's so many different sides to eBay that it's just interesting to me. And I know people have differing views on, talking to other resellers or sharing, but it's funny, in my local Goodwill, we all know each other, and we know each other so much that there are a couple of them will text. Like, I've had them text me, "Hey Holly, I've got a VCR in my cart. Are you coming by?" Like they know I look for VCRs. They don't do it, so they'll save it and grab it from me. Or I had another time, one of them texted me for a pair of sneakers, and I know one of the people who goes there, he does mostly shoes. So if I see shoes and he's in there, we'll give them to him. It's just a fun, it's a good group of people I probably would never have met otherwise, and it's just interesting. It's just a
Well, and
very
I think
interesting
that's
group.
great that these people aren't threatened by other sellers.
They aren't, yes.
That's a problem with some people, that they don't want to share anything about their business because
Yes,
they're threatened
right.
that their territory is going to be encroached upon. But I met a guy one time at Goodwill. I think I was looking through this container of like long, thin, like golf clubs and skis, and there's all these different crutches. There's always crutches at Goodwill.
The big bin,
And
the
I was
big
like,
round bin.
just looking for what was in there. And all this guy sells is vintage yardsticks, like from hardware stores. And that's all he sells. That's all he wanted. And I'm like, I don't want to sell. I don't want to ship a yardstick. Yeah. But what an interesting, very well-defined niche that, like, I don't even care about. And I'm sure he doesn't care about women's clothing or Christmas ornaments or
right.
Look at it. So, but yeah, when I first started eBay and figured out you could do this for a living, I didn't tell anybody because I was like,
well, and I thought the same thing.
Yeah, this is the most fantastic business idea. It's unlimited. You can make so much money. I'm not telling anybody because they're gonna go in my stores and they're gonna copy me and do what I'm doing. And looking back, that is the most ridiculous newbie thing because there's just way too much stuff to worry about other people taking it all. And most people personal friends and such that I've helped, they don't stick with it. It's too much work. You know,
I have found that, and
the patience to wait for things to sell. Yeah.
And I'm happy to share with anyone. In fact, I'm so conscious that I talk about it too much to everyone. They're probably sick of hearing about it, but I can't, if you're going to ask me, I'm going to tell you.
It's your passion. Of course you're going to talk about it. It's coming from your soul, not your mind.
Yes. Yeah. And if they're interested and they want to do it, I don't have any great wealth of experience, but I'm certainly happy to help in whatever way I can. And I've had 2 or 3 friends who have been interested and they're getting into it. And I'm excited for them. And I said, you've got to tell me when you sell something, because I'm just as excited when they have a sale as when I do. It's funny you said the newbie things too, because I remember a friend of mine who has been going to Goodwill recently was saying it's, you feel funny looking things up. And that I remember when I first went into Goodwill thinking I was so self-conscious about looking things up on my phone and the workers seeing me or whatever, whereas I just laugh when I look back at that now. And in fact, not only have I've made friends with other resellers, I'm also friends with the people that work in Goodwill, one of whom has since left, but we still have lunch together on a regular basis. It's become a good friendship. And they don't care if we're looking up, they know what we're doing. And I mean, Goodwill is there to sell you items. They don't care who they're selling to.
Right.
So, yeah. So and looking up isn't a big deal,
Like back in the day when smartphones first came out, you could be doing anything. You could be texting someone. You could be reading your email. It doesn't mean you're looking
right. True.
Anyway. But when that started, I kind of had that same thought, like, do they care? And really, those people in there are just doing their job. They don't care what you're doing. As long as you're not, harassing other customers, acting like a complete jerk in the store. Just nobody cares. And I think an employee one time did say, what are you doing on your phone? And I'm like, oh, I'm looking things up to see how much they sell for. And he's like, really? You can do that? Like, he didn't even know.
Yeah.
He didn't even know.
Yeah. And yes, I had one up when I was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, that I drive up to go where my parents are in that area. And one of the Goodwills I went in there, when I came in, I was looking up, he's like, there was a cast iron duck. I just put it away. That would probably be worth a lot. So now he's pointing me to things he's just put out that, I mean, they're helpful. That's been a good thing. Now, I will say the looking up factor, that's why I wasn't good at garage sales, because I'm self-conscious when I'm at a garage sale. If it's just me and the person there, and I feel like I need to make conversation with them, and it's just a different scenario. But I have a friend that's why it's all changed this summer, a friend who just enjoys going with me. I tell her she's the best helper there is. In fact, we've been going to garage sales and estate sales for probably a couple months, and my husband asked finally, he's like, so what does she buy when you go? And I said, nothing. She's not buying a thing. She just goes with me. And she's learned like what I'm looking for. And sometimes I'll miss something and she'll say, did you see that over there? And it's really been a fun thing. So, and helpful. And it's much easier to look up like with her there. So there's more than just me. I feel much more comfortable looking things up. So that's really changed it.
Yeah, I know that about garage sales. You're more self-conscious because there's fewer people there. And
yes,
I usually come back with a really sarcastic answer because that's who I really am.
Yeah, right. Well,
like, and I'll be looking something up and they'll be like, well, I already know that sells for $50 on eBay. And I'll just be like, really?
Yeah.
I'll give you $10 for it. And they'll be like, oh no, it's worth so much more than that. And I'm like, well,
let me show you.
Swing by later before you close down and see what you have left. Or they'll be like, what are you doing looking up on your phone? Are you looking up how much it sells for? And I'm like, well, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. You know,
right.
Sarcastic answer like that.
Yes.
Or I'll be like,
well, it is funny.
Yeah, my husband's a police officer. He just got off work. He might be coming by, or just make up something.
Right. We it is funny. So you do have those garage sales where they're pricing them at eBay prices, and that is no good. And they're usually, as you know, pricing them what they've looked them up, not actual sold prices. So they're mispriced on top of it. So if I see that, I generally don't bother with those. But there are other garage sales where things are very reasonably priced at garage sale prices. Mm-hmm. And someone might have something larger, and I'll even suggest to them, if I'm not interested in it, I will even suggest to them, hey, if you don't sell this in your garage sale, you could sell this on eBay or Facebook Marketplace. And I'll recommend that they try that. We're all in this together. So
yeah. And I remember being at a garage sale many years ago, and it was in a more affluent neighborhood, and everything they had for sale, like it was a lot of baby stuff, monitors, and
the baby stuff.
And they had the printout of how much it goes for on eBay taped to the wall behind it, like on everything. And so I walked in there and the prices of the items matched the eBay price. And I was like, what is all this? Just to see what they would say. And they were
right.
Oh, well, that sells for that much on eBay. So that's how much we're charging. And I just stopped. I looked around. I looked up. I looked down. I'm like, but this is a garage sale. This isn't eBay.
Right.
Why aren't you selling it on eBay? And we're like, well, because that's how much it's worth. And we just don't want to go to the trouble to have to ship it. And I'm like, okay, well, good luck. Have a great day. And I just left.
Right.
Good luck with getting $50 for a baby monitor at a garage sale. That's probably not going to happen.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. You do see a lot of that. So it's interesting. It's always interesting. That and there's that side of it. And I'm thinking also people who ask you if you'll sell things for them. When they find out that this is not necessarily a garage sale, but other people who find out you're doing eBay and asking you to sell things for them. And you have the same pricing issue where they think it's worth this amount, but really it's not worth that amount. And that
have you
never
done
ends
any
well.
Of that consignment?
I have not. I think actually before I got into it more like this business, I did it once for someone who was getting out of creative. Was it Creative Memories?
Yes.
One of those. Yes. And it was a lot of things for small dollars. So that was the amount of time I spent on it for the amount of money made by the time we split it was not worth the time, in my opinion. It was a friend, so I was happy to do it for them, but I would never recommend doing it for the money. And I found in the end, I don't do that. It's not worth it for me. I have enough trouble getting what I want to get listed of my own things, listed. And on top of that, people often do think something is worth more. They think one thing that is worth more that's not worth that. And yet they probably have something else that's worth twice what they think. It's just not a good match. But I always tell them I'd be happy to help you list it or show you how to list it or or I might suggest try putting it on Facebook Marketplace. That's a lot easier. You just, take some pictures, fill in your thing. So I tend to kind of push them in that direction when I can.
Yeah, you're right on that. I did quite a bit of consignment along the way, and the three main problems were they think it's worth more than it is. You're doing upfront unpaid work. If it doesn't sell, you wasted your time, and it doesn't sell fast enough to suit them. Like, I need.
Oh, right.
There's this traffic ticket. I need that money tomorrow. And it's like, that's not how this works. So
right.
I love George Kelly's answer to why he doesn't sell on consignment. If someone asks him, he'll say, no, because I don't want to, and I don't have to.
Simple. That keeps it
and
simple.
You know what? About a year ago, I stopped telling people I meet that I even sell on eBay. And I'm meeting a lot of new people now in a new city, but it's like, well, what do you do? Oh, I do video and podcast editing, which I do.
Right. That's right.
And that stops the conversation. When you tell them you sell on eBay, I've got, my dad's World War II thing. And can you sell, how much can you get for that? And, even if they're not serious, they'll start asking you about stuff they want you to sell. And I just want to be an incognito person. Like I have a regular job, and if it gets into it, then I just send them to my school. I'm like, oh, I got a whole school. You can go learn how to do it yourself. I just don't do that. Don't have time. Can't even get my own stuff done. Like I want to do more with my store that I'm doing. Everybody has 24 hours a day. It's how are you going to spend it? And I don't think other people realize the time investment, but they see that you have a skill, which eBay selling is a skill. You have a skill that can benefit them. So it's just like if you were an accountant. Oh, let me ask you about this tax thing, or, no matter what your profession is. So I had to find one where they wouldn't ask questions like, oh, I'm a veterinarian. Well, oh, my dog has this problem, they go into some situation. So I just pick something that I do, and it's kind of not super interesting. Or that wouldn't apply to their, I've never had a person say, oh, can you edit my daughter's graduation video? Right. I've never had somebody say that. So I'm sticking with video and podcast editing as my claimed profession. But then I have all these thousands of people online that know I'm an eBay seller.
Know the secret. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you're right, though. I think people don't know what does go into it. It sounds like you take a picture and click list, and that's it. And
you have the money in 5 minutes. Yeah.
Right. And it's more, there's some research, there's picking your words, there's your descriptions. And, there's, I think I guess in their defense, they really don't realize kind of the pieces to it. So,
yeah.
And also the other piece of selling on consignment, if it's on your eBay account, whatever it is I would be selling for them, that was another thing, especially if it's electronics. I want to make sure it works. I don't want to be responsible for somebody else's item that is not what it should be, or, has flaws of some sort. Like that was another risk. I wasn't ready to delve into that. So I didn't want to risk that.
Yeah. And then it can be returned. So you really can't give them your money until after the return window is closed.
Right.
Which I made that mistake with one of my early consignment sales. And I was just out the money and lost a friend because I was doing it for a friend as a favor. And she got all mad that it was being returned. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have to get that money back from you.
Right.
It was like $100. That was an expensive lesson, but you have to factor in, and let's face it, we are in a instant gratification society. People don't understand. Yeah. It may take 6 months to sell, and then you got to wait 30 days after it sells to make sure it doesn't come back. So unless they have an estate they're dealing with, or, storage unit, or a lot of items, And you can always charge an upfront listing fee.
Right.
It's like putting in the old days an ad in the newspaper. Like you pay for the ad, and whoever sees it sees it. And your item may not sell in the one ads, but that's a risk you're taking. So if you're doing consignment, you could always charge, say, well, yeah, I can do that for you. My fee is 50% of the sale price, and a $5 upfront listing fee.
Right. That's a good idea. Yeah, that would be a good one.
Never bring it up again.
Right. So that sounds
you can
fair
learn how to
enough.
do it yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that hour has flown by.
Yes.
So the final question is, since you're relatively new to selling all the time on purpose, 3 years now?
Yeah, about 3. Yeah, going on my 4th year. Yep.
What kind of advice would you give to people wanting to get into this?
Well, I think the advice I got from you is this is one of the things that really helped me as I've progressed. And it has to do like with returns or refunds, things like that. Realize this is a business and don't take it personally. Instead of belaboring over if you have a return or somebody asks a question or they don't think it was described as you described it. Like you said, think of it as Kohl's or whatever, say, oh, I'm sorry, answer, respond professionally and move on. Like, don't waste the emotional energy of that because you could belabor that. And I don't know, you just would seem to get caught up in it. But that really helped me just push things aside and move forward with things. Not that I've actually have a lot of returns, but somehow that mentality, I think, is very helpful. Don't, get too scared. It's just an item you're selling on eBay. You've got others on there, just move on. I think that was really, really helpful for me. And I would say that for a new person.
Yeah. And when you go to a store and return something, they're just doing their job, doing the return.
Right.
And they don't really even care if it is a product that broke or it just clothing that didn't fit or whatever. They don't care. They see 100 of you a day. They don't care.
Right. And you have to look at it that way. And I also think it helps you to see your business as a profession. So that was another thing in the beginning of being kind of embarrassed to explain what you're doing. It just doesn't sound, it's not exactly easy to describe. But it is a reminder. This is a form of a profession. This is a profession where we are doing something, that running a business, a small business.
A modern day Fred Sanford. You just sell stuff.
That's right.
Everybody knows that reference.
Fred Sanford is. Yes.
And now everybody who knows who that is has that little jingle in their head with the red truck driving along. But yeah, he's a junker. And some people call themselves that instead of a reseller, or you just say, yeah, I'm a junker. I'm a junk seller. I mean, old timey junkyard where people would go and look around for stuff they could, resell. Like if they were they were an auto mechanic, they'd go to junkyards and look around for specific things that they could use later on repairs or sell. So walk around the junkyard and pick out all the stuff that could be recycled and then take the bottles to the store and get the money for them like we did as kids. And, you just have ramped that up.
It's just a new modern day version that uses a lot more technology to do it. That's all there is to it.
Like, I call myself a redistribution specialist. I saw
that sounds very fancy.
A kid's name tag at the grocery store. And I was like, what? Because it would say, manager, assistant manager, whatever, deli. And I'm like, what is a redistribution specialist? He's like, oh, I take stuff from the back and put it out here on the shelf. So I'm just moving it around. He just made up his own title.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
I love that. I'm like, I'm stealing that.
That's a good one. The recycle piece to it is interesting too.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Getting things back out there to be used again and again.
And you have to wonder how many wonderful items, collectibles, are in the landfill, never to be seen again.
So true.
we can only do so much as one person, but I think as a group effort, the whole reselling business is, you can feel good about it because, hey, that thing didn't go to the landfill yet. Maybe it was going to go after that person uses it in 10 years, but it didn't go this time. So,
right.
And we're keeping the post office in business.
That's right. We sure are. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it was great to finally meet you face to face and have
you too.
What's on your schedule for the rest of the day?
Well, I got my one thing out and shipped, so I need to get listings done as usual. It's what I say every day, get things listed. I took pictures, so after this, I'll sit down and hopefully load up a few listings.
Okay, well, I challenge you to do 10.
Oh gosh, I have never gotten 10 done in one day. That would be, these people who say they can do 25 in a day. Now I know I am way too detailed. Anyone who would look at me would say I go way over the top. That's what my advice to the new person is. Reverse course. Do it your way. Just because somebody else does it this certain way, if that doesn't work for you, it's okay to do things your way, and don't compare yourself to other sellers, because you're running your own business the way that you want to run it. And I think we can all learn from each other, but that doesn't mean we need to do our business exactly like everyone else does. So some of us like to put the thank you cards in, some of us don't, and do what is you, what represents you the best. I will never get 25 listings done in one day because I'm too detailed, but it's okay. I'll be happy with the 5 I get up.
You don't know what that means. If they had 25 Christmas ornaments, all the same size and shape, so shipping's going to be the same.
Right.
And you just one after the other, boom, 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 boom. That's one thing. But if you're doing clothing and you're measuring it, and that takes longer. And I don't know where this magical number of 10 a day came from, but it's been out there for a long time. I guess it's because it's a nice round number, but even one listing a day is 30 months. Right. That's 365 things a year. And if that's all you can do, then celebrate doing that, because everybody's life is different, like you said. So,
okay. And
do what I'm going to let you go and do your thing.
All right.
We'll see you on the Facebook group.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you again, Holly, for making time to come on the podcast and sharing your knowledge so willingly. Today's trivia question is, why are chicken eggs different colors? How do they get that way? Here are 5 seconds to think it over. The color of an egg is mainly determined by the chicken's genetics. That means the breed of hen will usually indicate what color of eggshell will be produced. It's also tied to the color of the chicken's ear. Yes, chickens have ears. The color of the lobe varies with the breed of the chicken, ranging from white to almost black. Chickens with white earlobes lay white eggs exclusively, while birds with dark lobes lay brown eggs. There is also a breed of chicken that can have earlobes that are a pale green or blue color, and those chickens produce lightly tinted green or blue eggshells. So now you have a fun factoid to share at your Thanksgiving dinner. Next week, my guest is Carol, who is a wife, stay-at-home mom, homeschooling mom of 5 kids, a seamstress, and I have no idea how she gets it all done, but she balances life beautifully. I hope everyone has a nice Thanksgiving and you enjoy whatever you choose to do. I want to say that I am thankful for you, my listeners, for supporting this podcast by tuning in and listening every week. Remember, gratitude for what you already have really is enough. Talk to you next week. Bye.